guys, it's Allison from Allison's Notebook, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to create tiny happiness. I made a video a few weeks ago about self-care for extremely busy people, and this is going to build on top of the idea that small, tiny, little things can create huge results in creating more contentment and more happiness in your life. So if you want to hear my 6 tips on tiny little actions you can take for huge results leading to more contentment, then just keep watching. Now, if you know me in real life, you've heard me talk about this book. If you've read my blog in the last few months, you've also probably read about this book. But I read a book recently, a few months ago, called The Habits of a Happy Brain. And the thing that really encouraged me about it was the fact that really small things can have a huge impact. But the whole idea in the book was that our mammal brain uses these chemicals to tell us what to gravitate towards and what to move away from. And when we're growing up, sometimes we really get these signals crossed. For example, maybe the only time your mom paid attention to when you were growing up was when you ate pizza that one time. And so now, as an adult, your brain associates pizza with like the best thing you've ever had, and now you're overweight because you can't stop eating pizza. But you can actually retrain your brain to find happiness and to experience these contentment and happiness chemicals more often. I'm not going to talk about the chemicals associated with each of these steps. A lot of these tips I did get from this book, and so I'll go ahead and link that down below if you guys are interested. But just know that practicing these 6 tips, even though they're really, really tiny things, can result in really big changes over time in how you feel about yourself and the world around you. So the first tip I have for creating tiny happiness that can lead to big positive results in your life is to create goals every single day. Or at least every single week. And before you think, oh my gosh, that's just a lot of stuff I have to do, I want you to think tiny little things. There's a couple of areas where you can create goals. And so decide which area you want to try this experiment in. Do you want to do this at work? Do you don't want to do this in an aspect of your self-care? Or do you want to do this in relating to productivity in your home life? And then break the goals up into just tiny little chunks. A way that I will do this is I'll think about everything I have to do for the day. And often not all those things are going to get done. So then I would decide out of everything you wrote down, what are the things that absolutely have to get done? And I would decide on like 1 or 2 of those things at the most, even if you have a list of 15 things, and then simply check off the things that you did on that list. And that action is really satisfying and can lead to more contentment. Some examples of goals that you can set for yourself are things like making sure that you have 10 minutes alone every single day to either meditate or just be alone. Another example of a goal you can set for yourself having to do with self-care is a list of foundational self-care items like brushing your teeth, showering, sleeping at least 6 to 8 hours. But come up with things that you think are manageable, but the things that are non-negotiable and important to you, write them down and check them off. Over time, you'll want to challenge yourself a little bit with this, but this action is going to make you feel really, really good about yourself. The next tip I have for creating tiny happiness that can lead to big positive results in your life is to do something outside of your normal routine. Again, think small here. Don't think huge. When you're thinking of something you want to do outside of your norm, you want to think about something that is just outside of your comfort zone. So an example of this is like if I go to a networking happy hour, I'm more inclined to gravitate towards the people that I already know. This is really comfortable. Now, I'm a pretty outgoing person, but in my heart of hearts, I'm actually an introvert. So it can be kind of hard for me just to approach someone cold and start a conversation. So for me, that's a little bit outside of my norm, but it's not hugely outside of my norm. Another thing you can do that is slightly outside of your norm is to maybe do your hair differently or do your makeup differently. A little bit outside of your comfort zone, not a huge thing. If you never wear makeup ever, you probably don't want to wear a bunch of red eyeshadow like I'm doing today. So if you always wear your hair down, maybe you wear it up one day. But do something that creates just a tiny bit of adventure for you, step a little bit outside your comfort zone, and this is another way you can create more confidence and tiny happiness. Another idea I have for creating tiny happiness is affirmations. I mentioned the other 2 things first because I actually read recently that doing affirmations, if you have no self-esteem and no confidence, can actually be detrimental to your self-esteem. And so I think it's good if you have a foundation, at least from what I've read, It's good if you have a foundation of self-esteem before trying affirmations. That said, affirmations were a really powerful tool in my life for a long time. I still do them today, I just don't do them in such a structured way. But what was really life-changing for me was writing down affirmations on Post-it notes and putting them in different places around my apartment. I had one on my coffee machine, one on my refrigerator, one next to my bedside table where I charge my phone, and one in the bathroom shower. This is like a major pro tip, but if you put a piece of paper or a note card in a plastic bag, it'll just stick to the wall of your shower because of the humidity. I would write down things that you either are starting to believe about yourself or that are important for you to believe about yourself, and put those on these note cards. Now, in the spirit of starting tiny, maybe you start with one sticky note and one affirmation and build on top of that. Some of the examples of affirmation that I wrote for myself are: you are beautiful, you are worthy of love, you are entirely capable of success. Those are the kinds of affirmations that I had for myself. And when you're saying an affirmation, don't just read it and then move on. I would focus on really taking the time to absorb that affirmation. So for me, that looks like saying, I see the sticky note and I read it in my head, you are beautiful. And then I take a deep breath and I think about the idea that I'm beautiful, and I think about the things that I like about my appearance, and I really try to believe that affirmation. The fourth tip I have for creating tiny happiness is to help someone. Again, when you're thinking about the idea of helping someone, think tiny things that are really easy for you to achieve. And this is really important for this step especially because a lot of people who are extremely busy and need self-care are people who are overextending themselves to other people already. So while helping someone can stimulate happiness in your brain, if you're already overextended, you want to think about small ways you could help someone so it doesn't take up too much brain space and too much energy. Some examples of this are giving someone a compliment. Another thing you can do is at work, if you're making yourself a cup of coffee, ask a coworker if they would also like a cup of coffee. Bonus points if you do it for someone that you're not really close to or you don't get along with that well, because that would be a way to build more intimacy and connection, which I'll talk about in a second as well. So the next tip I have for creating tiny happiness is to find a way each day to avoid small talk. And what I mean by this is trying to think of a question to ask someone or a way to interact that's more meaningful. We always come to each other and we ask, "How are you?" And then we answer, "I'm fine." That's not a very meaningful interaction. It's small talk. It's just something that we say to each other without thinking about it. So instead, without a lot of extra effort, you can rephrase this question to come up with a more meaningful question that will create a more meaningful interaction. One example of something that I will ask someone to create a more meaningful interaction is, "What's been your favorite part of your week so far?" This catches people off guard. It takes them a minute, they have to think about it, and usually they are able to come up with something that they really enjoyed about the week. And this is effective for a couple different reasons. First of all, make somebody think about something that they're grateful for. It also makes somebody feel heard because you asked them a question that was meaningful. So just changing up the way that you ask people about themselves is a really simple way to avoid small talk and create tiny happiness. And the last tip I have, this idea of creating a gratitude jar or a gratitude box. The way this works is that every time something happens to you that is a really positive interaction or positive experience, I would write it down on a piece of paper and stick it in a jar or a box. Now, the idea of creating gratitude lists every day or coming up with a bunch of things you're grateful for is also really effective in helping you to feel more contentment. But I like the idea of a jar or a box because it relates to this idea of taking tiny actions. So instead of listing out everything you're grateful for every single day, writing it down, come up with one thing, put it on a slip of paper, put it in the jar, and then come back to that. And you don't have to come back to it every day, but come back to it when you feel like you need a little boost of happiness. So those are my 6 tips for creating tiny happiness in your life that can result in big positive change. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you like it, and also make sure to subscribe because I put out new videos every single week, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.
Even my cat loves your show.